Hello, hello. Just an audio one tonight because I'm very tired and I'm actually in bed currently, and I didn't really want to go to any effort tonight. If you're watching, let us know in the chat how the audio is. I'm going to assume that the audio is fine. Also, this will help me get back on doing like vids and streaming if I can just fire one out. But hello, it's been a while. I'm still alive. I have just been relentlessly working for the last wee bit, so I've not really put out much content. I've not got on any Doctor Who stuff. The Doctor Who stuff was really like propelling me through I don't know, through the internet to do stuff. I should probably get back on the comic reviews as well. But anyway, I saw Shazam the other week. Uh, this isn't so much like a hot take as it's like a kind of microwaved, like frozen ready meal take of some kind. There might be some audio troubles every time I laugh because the laptop is precariously balanced on me tummy. But yeah, Shazam happened, which I'm still quite in awe with. I'm still quite in awe that DC, the current DC film studio, whatever it is, made a Shazam film. That's mind blowing to me. The same studio that made bloody Batman versus Superman made this film, which already off the bat that might not be true because it had like New Line Cinema or whatever in the credits. So I don't know how DC operate, but the point is, the DC Extended Universe put out a Shazam film, which is magical, like appropriately enough. It's such a kind of, I guess it's not like a left turn or like a sudden veer, but it's such a different film from that first crop of them. Hello, Ewan. How's the audio on your end? I hope it's good. Ewan's in the chat. Everybody say hello to Ewan. But yeah, we should probably start at the start. I saw Man of Steel in. Oh, it's crisp. The audio is apparently crisp, everyone. That's great. I saw Shazam, and I saw. I'm just falling asleep because I'm in bed. But I saw Superman First Contact. What's it called? Superman Man of Steel. Man of Steel. My feelings, cards on the table. I thought Man of Steel was basically fine, right? It's been some time. God, has it been 6 years? Is what? All right, okay. Apparently, it's been 6 years. Like, I thought Man of Steel was basically fine at the time. I've not seen it since then. I want to say it's just never on. Like a lot of the Marvel films, you see it on like Netflix, or you see them on the telly when you're like passing by, like they're on like a bank holiday weekend or whatever. But I've never seen Man of Steel since. I've had ample opportunity. I was like staring at a copy of Man of Steel in a charity shop, and I was like, it's not even 50p. Just get it, Craig. Just get it to have. But I should have. But at the time, I wasn't feeling it. I'm a big Superman fan. I think the Superman in the kind of DC extended universe, or whatever they're calling it nowadays, is horrendous. But in Man of Steel, I thought he was basically fine. You know, he's not Master Superman, but he's not like the worst Superman in the world. He gets that way in Batman versus Superman, but that's more an effect of Batman versus Superman. I would classify Batman versus Superman as anti-life. You know, the thing Darkseid's after to control or dominate all life in the galaxy. Batman versus Superman is a key factor in that equation. It is just the most dreadful film, the most dreadful piece of entertainment. It's not even entertaining. It fails to be entertaining. It's a versus film, like Godzilla versus King Kong or whatever. and it's not entertaining. It's just dreadfully dull for like 3 hours. Worst cinema experiences ever, to be honest. But at the start, Man of Steel, even though it's the same Superman and it has a lot of the problems, it's a ground bread. I'd love some ground bread, right? It's a ground bed for all of the problems that Man of Steel, that Batman versus Superman would like blow up and make 1,000 times worse. I didn't even mind at the time the Metropolis City destruction battle. I was mainly laughing throughout Man of Steel at that because it was just so ridiculous. It wasn't even because like I suppose I would nowadays I'd probably be harsher to react. I would call that like betrayal of the character. But at the time, it was just such a weird thing that happened in that film that they went full Dragon Ball Z, and it was like a reaction to Superman Returns not having as much action, and people really wanted to see, Superman have like a Dragon Ball Z battle. But at the time, like I say, like most of the film, like it is quite long and dreary, but at the time didn't mind. Didn't even mind Zod's neck snap, to be honest. I don't know where my brain was at, and I don't know where it's continually at, because these are things that I would hate if they happened currently, but because they happened in 2013 or whatever, I just wasn't necessarily violently against them. But then you were kind of lumbered with that Superman for Batman versus Superman, and Batman versus Superman, as I've previously stated, is just horrendous. Everything about it is just the worst. It's the worst Batman. It's like, I mean, the Wonder Woman in it is fair enough, but she is only in it for a little bit and then gets to show up and have an act, like a fight scene. But like the plot, like the visuals, the jar of piss, the inexplicable jar of piss. Basically, I don't think I have to go through all of my thoughts for all of these films, but Batman versus Superman, definitely the worst one of them. That's the bar that we're going to judge all of the other films against, because it was so like core of the earth low that any film that comes after that is fairly okay. I thought Wonder Woman was pretty good. I know everybody gives it kind of crap for its like third act big grey monster villain, but again, I thought like Lupin from Harry Potter with his wee moustache merged into the big Ares grey CGI monster. I thought that was pretty hysterical. I genuinely had a really good time laughing at that. I thought that was pretty great. And then the rest of the film was pretty great. So they had a good hit. They had one good film, and then they had Justice League. And Justice League was so, again, I'm going to keep overusing this, but it was hysterically boring. Like, Justice League is one of the most boring films I've ever seen. Somehow they made the concept of Justice League boring. Somehow they made the train wreck, that you probably hear a big, like, siren. Shall we wait it out? I don't know what the kind of etiquette is for sirens. But yeah, they made the train wreck of the production of Justice League, which, Snyder stepped down because of personal tragedies, and they got Whedon in there, and the whole kind of their styles don't match, and it was going to be 2 films, and then they cut it down to 1. They somehow made that a very boring film. Like if it had been like a proper train wreck, that would be something to talk about. But it's basically nothing. Like there's a couple bits in Justice League that I genuinely love, to be honest. But like other than that, deeply boring. I remember just sitting in the cinema during Justice League and being just looking at my watch basically, or my phone, being like, is it still going? Are we still doing stuff? Because nothing felt. It just felt like a genuine struggle to get through, and not in the way that Batman versus Superman was a struggle, because that film is actively trying to like strangle you in your seat. Justice League is just it's not even a mess. It's not even an entertaining mess. It's just like a 2 hours of like, okay, I guess that happened. And then every film going forward after Justice League was kind of like, all right, are DC still making films? Are they still going to like put stuff out? Because Aquaman happened, and I've not seen Aquaman. I know it's out on DVD now, and Shazam, spoilers, was such a decent film that I might actually see Aquaman now. And I know a lot of geeks around me in my circles have said that Aquaman was quite good, and I was watching a YouTube video somewhere that compared it favorably to the 80s Flash Gordon film, and it was saying it was quite cheesy and camp in kind of an entertaining way, and that does make me want to see it. I think I saw that video after it was out at theaters or cinemas, so I didn't have a chance to see it there. But like I say, it's out on DVD, so I might see it. And I feel like the word around Aquaman was that you should see it, but it's not necessarily a good film. Shazam, you should see it, and I would say it is quite a good film. I really enjoyed Shazam. We're like 10 minutes in, and we'll start talking about Shazam. I really like Shazam. I really like Shazam comics because they're generally like kind of all ages, big, bold superheroics. And they've only in the time that I've been reading comics, in the last 10 or so years, there's been quite like a kind of sparse spattering of Shazam comics. Big Goff Johns had backup issues in his Justice League book where he had little, was it like 2-page, or it was only like a few pages, and then they had like a big issue where it set up a kind of Shazam comic. And that was really good, and that's kind of what the film's mostly kind of taken all its inspiration from, really. It's basically an adaptation or a condension of Goff Johns's Justice League backups, minus the tiger that appeared in there. But there's a whole lot of tiger stuff in that, but we'll get to it. So it's basically, if you ever read those backups, you basically kind of know the general kind of structure of this film and where it's coming from. I would really recommend that you go read some Shazam stuff or some Captain Marvel stuff. I will forget that he's called Shazam now, mostly in this video, and I will keep probably referring to him as Captain Marvel. It's useful because there are characters in this film that aren't Captain Marvel, basically, that you could call Shazam. We'll get there. Anyway, full spoilers. There's just going to be relentless spoilers throughout this video. So if you care about that, I don't know why you're listening. But yeah, go read Shazam. They're good. Goff Johns' run's pretty good. There was an event out a couple of years ago, or maybe more than a couple of years ago now, called Convergence. And you don't really have to know anything about that. Just go search out the Shazam issues. They have incredible art and an incredible story. It's only like 2 issues. I think it's Doc Shanner or Doc Shaner. I can never pronounce comic book people's names because they're written down and you don't hear them read out. So, yeah, his art's fantastic and perfectly suited for Shazam. Also, Grant Morrison Multiversity, there's a Shazam issue. That's another fantastic issue of Shazam. Both of those series lean heavily on the kind of all ages aspect. And this film kind of does that, but it's like scary in places. It's much more scary than I was expecting. And like, normally I'm not like, I mean, I am very squeamish. I don't like horror films or gore. And there's not necessarily gore in this. There is a little bit of horror, but I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh no, I wouldn't take my children to this. But like, if I was a dad, I'd probably be at least a bit surprised. They don't lean heavily on how scary or like a little bit scary. They don't lean heavily on the scary factor in the marketing at all, from what I've seen. So it was quite a surprise going in. But yeah, so they basically did it. They basically adapted one of my favorite single issues of a comic, which is that issue of Goff Johns' backups that was a whole issue of Justice League, where it's like the finale to that run, and they get out, they beat the big bad, which I feel like is Black Adam in the comics. Spoilers, Black Adam, The Rock, is not in this film. There's like a wee tiny bit of Black Adam where the wizard does some backstory. The wizard Shazam explains to kid Savannah, because this film opens with what I would call Netflix bloat. There's a weird amount of kind of Netflix bloat. You know how like Netflix shows are either like 10 to 12 to 15 episodes long, and you could probably cut out an episode here and there and make it a better like story or film, because you know Netflix shows are basically 8-hour films. This film kind of has that, even though it's only like so many hours. It kind of works because, like Iron Man 3, this is a Christmas film. I don't know if this was meant to come out at Christmas last year or whatever, and it was pushed back to now, but it's straight up just a Christmas film, and I feel like it would work more if it did come out at Christmas, because you'd be more inclined to give it a pass, because it's kind of long, a wee bit long and unwieldy and kind of slow in places where I wouldn't expect a modern film to be slow. There's a lot of kind of just cutting about and not as much action as I would have normally expected a superhero film to have. Maybe it's because I'm kind of judging it against the Marvel films, which is going to be inevitable, but they're more kind of fast-paced. I'm going to mix up a lot of L's and R's and just putting L's where they shouldn't be. Those Marvel films are like fast-paced, and they've done like 30 of them now, so they know what they're doing. So you could maybe ascribe some of that to like DC's finding out what works. So this film starts with like Kid Savannah. So Dr. Savannah is the main villain of this film, and Dr. Savannah is like an archetypical mad scientist from the 30s. He's like a wee goblin man, but in this, he's a regular dude who's quite scary, I guess. I really liked that his whole deal was that he was chosen to be the champion, chosen to be Captain Marvel, chosen to be Shazam at the start of the film. But the wizard's like, no, you're not pure of heart. And then he spends the rest of his life trying to get back to the Rock of Eternity where the wizard's based and exact his revenge. And his like whole thing is that his dad and his brother don't take him seriously because of magic and because he's like a nerd, I guess, because they're already not like, they already hate him before the film starts. Like he's in this, like it's the 70s and he's got like a magic 8-ball and he's being a nerd in the back of the car, and his like jock brother, and I assume jock dad, business dad, he's like is he Lex Luthor from Smallville? He's like a Smallville actor. And he must not be Lex, he'll be Lionel Luthor. I never watched Smallville, but I kind of want to now. I don't know what's happened to me, but I kind of want to watch Smallville. What's going on? Why? I think it's because I watched Voyager the other day, and like Voyager's crap but comfiness has infected me, and I could just sit and watch box set after box set of Smallville, and it would be box sets because like I'm sure it's not on Netflix. I'd have to like go out and search out like pound box sets of Smallville. It sounds like a really good time in like a terrible way. They all, like I remember that Aquaman that is just like a guy in a hoodie. It's great. Anyway, so it starts in the 70s, and there's this whole thing where, I mean, I know it kind of functionally explains the setup, and it's like the wizard has been looking for a champion for ages, and like no one's pure of heart, and it sets up Savannah's whole thing of not being good enough. Because he like the wizard's like, no, you're corrupt. I can't give you the power. And he spends the rest of his life. He like has this all like foundation that he's convinced them that they're studying mass hysteria, but actually it's him mapping out all the other people that the wizard has picked up but not chosen, and like mapping magical symbols and runes to get back to the Rock of Eternity. And like I was kind of in disbelief that this was the setup to the film, because I would have just started the film with like Billy being a delinquent, because this is like street delinquent Billy Batson that's in this film, kind of. Not as much as he was in the comic, but to an understandable degree in this film, because he's got a whole mother thing that we'll get into. But it's a weird like Netflixian, like you can imagine this is the first like 10 to 20 minutes of a first episode of a Netflix show. The sheer amount of time they spend in the 70s. And they have like a whole like car crash stunt scene, or like I guess CGI or whatever. But there's a whole like thing that sets up Savannah. And the reason I started talking about Savannah is that I kind of like the whole his place in the film, because his thing is that like he's not being taken seriously, but he gains like basically Shazam powers and is powered up by the 7 deadly sins, which we'll get to, which were pretty scary. But the rest of the film, he takes himself very seriously and he works. I want to say he's like a good example of a modern, or like super modern supervillain that works, because one of the big complaints that people have about Marvel films and kind of superhero films in general is that the villains are usually quite lackluster or not very memorable. But weirdly, I think that like Savannah, like big Savannah, kind of works, and it's because he takes himself like incredibly seriously, but no one else in the film does, because it's like a comedy and they're all just having like comedy around him. And I think that's great. There's a fantastic scene in the film where he has like a monologue, like they're having a Dragon Ball Z battle in the sky, and he's like monologuing about how he's going to like rip out like Shazam's brains and stuff, and he's like really going for it. And then it cuts to Shazam, like Captain Marvel, who's in like the other side of the sky, and he just can't hear him because he's so far away and it's windy. And like it's great. It's a great moment, and the film's kind of like full of those, and that's kind of the tone where like horrible, realistic, or like grim things are happening, but it's also set in this comedy world. I've run out of steam. I don't know why I started talking about Savannah, to be honest. To be honest. But yeah, Billy's cool. He's like a street delinquent because he lost his mum. Like he was at the shows, and he was like 3 or something, and he like left his mum to go pick up this toy that she just gave him that he lost, and then didn't find his mum, and has been like a street delinquent slash cutting about foster homes in America for years. It's quite grim because it goes into that, and it goes into how he's been running away from his foster homes and he doesn't stay with anyone. And the whole theme of the film is family, and they hammer you over the head with that. But again, it's a Christmas film, and I feel like that's fine. I can totally picture myself watching this at Christmas because it's 1,000% just a Christmas film, weirdly. But I think Billy works, which is an important thing that you'd probably want nailed down. Like he says, like "holy moly" and like "gee whiz" in ways that kind of work for himself and the film. It's weird that they've managed to walk that line on like "gee whiz" and "holy moly," but they did it. They got his like 30s like paperboy catchphrases in there, and again, it is just the Goff Johns book, which has the whole new 52 kind of Marvel family, because they have his new foster home, which is Mary Marvel, Freddie. I'm going to try and remember all the kids' names. Freddie, Eugene, Pedro. Is it Pedro? Pedro. I want to say, I might be being horrendous there, but I want to say it's Pedro, and Darla. And I'm hopefully not forgetting someone. But yeah, they have the entire cast in there, and for like a lot of the film, I felt like they were kind of wasted. Or like for the first half, I was like, oh, they've got them all in there, but they're not really doing anything with them. But that's kind of just for the first half of the film, and then towards the latter half, or like, I guess the second half of the film, they all get something to do, and it does feel like a kind of ensemble kind of thing, even though the first half of the film mostly focuses on Billy and Freddie cutting about being YouTubers, YouTubing the use of the Shazam powers, and that again feels like it would be horrendous. Like that would be like them trying to be modern, but it is just them being dumb, and it works really well. Also, Chuck, is it Zachary Levy? I'm not entirely sure what he's called, but I'm just going to call him Chuck. Chuck from Chuck, who is Shazam in this film. I found him a wee bit weird for like 5 minutes, and then I was like, "Aye, he's Shazam." Like it felt okay. Like I want to say he's as buff as he looks. Like people on the internet are just like, "Oh, he's got like padded suit or whatever," but I don't care. Like, see if it was just an entirely padded suit. It's a pretty great looking padded suit. Like it works. Like it doesn't look bad, and his kind of acting, like again, I did find it quite weird for like 5 minutes until it like clicked when he was, because he's like acting like he's 15 or whatever, and like I thought I was gonna have like trouble with that because I kind of just wanted him not to. I wanted him to like, because that's the whole gimmick where it's like he's 15 but he's got the man bod, and he's like all the jokes come from him being 15, but like, you know, going to buy beer and stuff because he looks like a dude. I don't know how old Chuck is now, but I'm going to imagine 30 something, maybe pushing 40, because like how old was Chuck when Chuck was about? Because like Chuck is like the 2000s, you know. He says he like looks 25 at one point, and I was like, how old are you, Chuck? How old are you really? But yeah, so him acting like a 15-year-old, I thought was going to get kind of grating, but he carried it off. He carried it off quite well, and I like Chuck from Chuck, so that was pretty good. The scary parts of the film, they're not like scary, but they're scarier than I assumed they would be for a Shazam film, came from the Seven Deadly Sins, who are locked away in the Rock of Eternity, but break out because the wizard is too weak to keep them there. And I saw somewhere that they were like directly kind of inspired, or at least their escape scene was directly inspired from Ghostbusters. And you can kind of see that kind of like weirdly scarier than you would expect vibe from them, because they do a lot of like just genuinely horrendous things throughout the film. At one point, Savannah like throws a guy out of a skyscraper. He throws his brother. He rocks up to his dad's office, and he's like, basically like, look at me now. And he just like picks up his brother and throws him out a window. And then there's just a scene which it was very kind of Robocop-ian, but like there's just a scene where he lets the 7 deadly sins out in this office, and they just kill everyone in the office. And it's kind of off screen, but it's also kind of not off screen. And there's like the windows. He locks them in the office, and the windows are kind of opaque, and you could see it telegraphed that there was going to be like a scare where they all like bang up against the window trying to get out. It's just a kind of like, even though you could see it like coming, it was still quite affecting. It was quite, alarming that these people were being murdered to death by these horrendous demons, and they did look like demons. The one of them was like straight up from like a Nurgle demon, like greed. Just like I know Nurgle is like kind of basically greed, even though he's like poison. He's like disease and death, and like happiness, like happily diseased in death and whatnot. But one of the demons looked like Nurgle, and he's like belly opened up into a mouth. The one of them was just like, I guess Lust was just straight up like a tentacle monster who like menaced Mary. It was kind of weird, but he was like a full-on tentacle monster. Like that was in there. And then there was another scene where Billy learns to fly. There was an incredibly well done jump scare because he learns to fly. He like falls from orbit and then lands like inches from the ground, and he's like super happy that he's learned to fly. And then he's immediately hit by a truck. I genuinely jumped. I genuinely jumped at that moment because it was such a nice, like quiet, like happy scene, and then he's like immediately battered by a truck, and it was just a genuine like it got me. I admit it. It got me. But yeah, I'm kind of going at random, but the film kind of goes at random as well. Like it's kind of a mix between genuine horror, like just the sins and Savannah being quite nasty to people and things, and kind of a slice of life anime, I guess, a kind of a slice of life comedy where Billy and Freddy cut about making money from superpowers and kind of testing out their superpowers. There's a great scene where they stop a convenience store, I guess they're called, being robbed, as you do, and they test out if they're bulletproof, and he is indeed bulletproof, and then he's just like, oh, we don't know if like you're bulletproof or your suit's bulletproof because they'd only been shooting him in like the symbol, and he's like, shoot him in the face, and they're like, what? Oh yeah, shoot me in the face, and then the mugger's like, shoot him in the face. It was really good. It was kind of all over the place, but it worked. They mixed all of the kind of. I didn't think the scariness would work, but it did, and I guess I would want less of that. I don't know. Like I said at the start, I like my Shazam because it's kind of big, bold, bright, super heroics, and I wasn't expecting as much of the grimness as I was expecting. The key thing I'm probably striving at, the thing I was thinking about the other day, the grimness doesn't feel like try-hardy. Like it doesn't feel like it's Zack Snyder grimness. It doesn't feel like it's, I would classify it as like new metal grimness is what Zack Snyder does. Like you could put a lot of new metal over Batman versus Superman and it would fit right in just well. But the grimness in this was kind of, it was literal demons doing the grimness. And it wasn't just like, look how cool we are, look how edgy we are. It was demons being demons, and then the demons were dealt with by the big, shiny, bright superheroes. So it wasn't like eye rolling. It wasn't like Batman, killing people for the sake of killing people. Remember when Batman stabbed a guy in Batman versus Superman? I don't know why that gets me as much as it does, because he'd like murdered so many people by that point, and he had like shot so many people by that point. But there's that bit in Batman versus Superman where he just stabs a guy. Oh god, it's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. There wasn't any moments in Shazam that I can recall that made me feel like anything Zack Snyder has done with the DC universe. It just felt good. Like it felt like the jokes landed most of the time. There's like some groaners, but there's always some groaners in these films. But they mostly landed. The action, like I say, it was quite slow, or like not necessarily slow, but kind of lethargically paced. But I feel like that works in its favor being a Christmas film. Like if you think of it going in that it's a Christmas film, it's December, it's a kind of nice, warm, glowy kind of a film. I think it works like that. There is some stuff in it, like I say, the grimness that is like, why is this in here? And I feel like his like because Billy confronts his mum, who basically abandoned him and is okay with abandoning him, and it's in there so he can have his like real family moment where he like no he doesn't have to like keep running away and trying to search for his mom who never wanted him, and it's in there to like cut him off from that. But it's really quite grim. Like his mum is like a terrible person, and there's kind of circumstances around there, and she was like 17 or whatever when she had him, and like that's like a real world problem and stuff, and there's stuff to talk about. But the way that she carries it off in the film just makes it come across like she's terrible, and it's a weird realism for a Shazam film, I thought anyway. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but just the way that the mum carried it off, it wasn't that it was just that she was like happy to abandon him, and then still happy that she abandoned him. She wasn't like overtly happy, but it wasn't like a I did wrong or whatever. It was just like, you're okay, like you're still doing well, aren't you? Because I abandoned you when you were like 3. It was a weird scene. It was weird, but it served the function of getting Billy to where he needed to be for the finale or whatever. The thing that I was excited about going in was if they would adapt the full Gough Johns thing, where Shazam shared all of his powers with his like new adopted family and gave them the ability to transform into superheroes. The toy line kind of spoiled it, because the toy line, you can see that they do get the powers, and you can go get an action figure of all of the family, which is rad. I was like, maybe that's just the toys and they won't do it in the film, but they did. They absolutely did. And the scene where like everybody becomes like part of the Marvel. See, this is where like the Captain Marvel Shazam thing. Like, what do you call the Shazam family? The Shazam family, the Marvel family. For saying the Shazam family doesn't feel great, and like you have to name all of those characters, because you just refer to them as their like human name, but then that doesn't. You're not really conveying the fact that they've transformed. Before, you could say that like Freddie was Captain Marvel Jr. and like Mary is Mary Marvel, but you can't really call Mary Marvel anymore. So what do you say? But that scene is in there. It's great. It's fantastic. I feel like they didn't necessarily do everything they could do with, because like Darla gets a lot of screen time, and they kind of split out Shazam's powers between the family, like not inherent, like not like explicitly, but like it looks like Darla has more super speed, and like Pedro has more super strength, and Eugene has more electric powers, and that kind of thing. And it seems like, and in the final product, really, Darla had more screen time. Pedro's beard, again, I keep calling him Pedro. I'm not sure if he's called Pedro, but Pedro's beard was incredible, which they needed to get in there because that was in the comic, and that was one of the greatest moments of the comic. That made me just genuinely ecstatic seeing that on the screen. The fact that we've gone from, in a few short years, maybe 3 years, I don't know, but in a few short years, going from Batman versus Superman's absolute horrendousness to adapting basically one of my most favorite comics of all time, that issue where they all become like Marvels, is absolutely fantastic, and it genuinely conveyed that on the big screen. It was magical. It was absolutely magical to see. And yeah, like it was really good. It was really good. There's a scene where there's a lot of scenes. There's a few things we should talk about before I finish. I've basically got a lot of what I wanted off my chest, but there's a scene where they show Savannah's weakness, which is having, because he has the sins inside him which are powering him up, and he can like send them out like Pokemon to like do stuff for him, but then he becomes less powerful when they're outside of him. And there's a scene where the family all come together to rescue Billy, and they set up previously that Freddy is like a superhero geek, and he has like a batarang, and he like throws a batarang at the back of Savannah's head, and it like draws blood, which previously in the film they set up that mortal weapons could not hurt the gods. Basically, they can't hurt Shazam, and they can't hurt Savannah. And that scene is there explicitly to show that the sins are outside of him, so he's weaker, so he can be hurt by mortal means. But in this, before they like, because that you know that when they throw it, but before they double down on it and they explain that, you know, they do some exposition to say that's what's happening. Before the exposition, though, like in my mind, I was like, is that a real batarang? Because they said it isn't, but you know, it could be a real batarang. And I imagine like batarangs probably have some amount of like cold iron or, you know, anti-demon metals in them because he's Batman. And in the comics, absolutely that would be in there. That would be 100% something like Batman's into. And like logically, like I know it's just a replica, and I know the mechanic of the scene was just to show that the demons were out of him. But get that cold iron in there for Batman. It's such a like dumb and amazing thing that it could be true. Yeah. The other thing related to that is that there's a lot of scenes. Well, there's one scene, I suppose. It feels like a lot of scenes, but there's a lot of scenes where Shazam goes through a shopping center and there's like merch, and there's like kids wear like t-shirts and stuff with Batman's logos on them and Superman logos on them. And I don't think I am the guy. I haven't really thought about it since the cinema, to be honest. Maybe once, but it's like that immersion breaking thing, because the merch that is on the shelves is like real world merch, and it has like the one I saw, the one that stood out to me was there was like a Playmobil, or like it was like a really young toy, Imaginext. It was Imaginext Bat armor stuff. It was like a big play set, but it was the Jim Gordon Batman mech suit as a Playmobil play set thing. And like the question, like, how does that work? How does it work in that universe that exists? Because that's such a specific deep cut that Imaginext have put out of like a couple years ago. Jim Gordon was Batman and he cut about in this mech suit. It's such a weird design. Like, how does that work in the Shazam universe? It's like, how does merch work? It's only been like a couple of years, but like there's like, I get there would be Superman merch, but Batman merch, and like do they know? Does the world at large know about Aquaman? I've not actually seen Aquaman. Maybe they do, but it's something that a younger me would probably think too hard about. But I'm trying just to smile at it and move on with my life. It's definitely not worth thinking about, but it's in there. It's definitely in there. And then I suppose the final thing we should talk about is that how is this film connected to the rest of the DC stuff? I think it was Comic-Con last year. They rebranded, didn't they? They changed it from DC Expanded Universe to Worlds of DC, which I laughed for quite a long time at, because essentially that was them. It was them being grown up, but it was also them being it was like an admission of defeat, because they're just going to say, right, these films are just in their own wee worlds until they're successful. If they're successful, we'll go from there. But we'll just we'll just keep doing things until they work. And it looks like they've had a couple wins in a row, which fair play to them. So going in, I wasn't really expecting many like cameos or appearances from other heroes, and there is only one. No, there's kind of technically more than one, because the credits scene, which was pretty good, was like kind of an animated Shazam cuts about with all of the other DC superheroes, and it was nice animation and stuff. It was cool to watch. It was drawn on like lined paper, kind of punk aesthetic pop punk aesthetic. I don't know. The music was good. I kind of should check, should search that out. But the last thing that happens in the film is that Superman appears, and he's shot from the neck down, so you don't see his face. And I thought that was pretty funny. Like, the setup is that during the film, there's a kind of a moment where Freddy wants Billy to appear as Shazam at his school to show that he's friends with Shazam, and that'll like put the bullies in their place. But then that doesn't happen because the kind of classic road movie, the pals fallout moment happens, and there's a whole thing. But then the last thing in the film is the whole family gathers round, and Shazam comes in, and he's like, "Yo, Freddy's my pal. Listen here. Also, I've brought my other pal." And he like looks off screen, and then like, oh god, I say like so many times. I shouldn't think about it because then I can't speak. But Superman comes in, and he's like carrying a lunch tray, and he sits down, and it's a good comedy moment. Like, Chuck sells it because he's like gormlessly smiling about, and like look. I feel like he looks at the camera and is like, eh. So it's good. It feels kind of odd. It's them. I guess, playfully acknowledging that they don't have a Superman. I don't know why you would necessarily. It felt kind of off. Basically, it felt a wee bit weird. Like, it's a good. It's getting on for a good joke. I liked it, but I don't know. I don't know if that'd. I don't know, man. It's a weird kind of. It's a weird kind of moment, Easter egg / end of the, because it's the end of the film. It's the last thing that happens. So I don't know, and it's the full like Henry Cavill suit, and apparently it was the John Williams music, which I missed at the time. I don't know how I missed that because you've been wanting that in the films for ages. But I think I was mostly just laughing or just being like, "Oh my god, look at the thing! They did the thing!" But yeah, but that happens. So Superman, or a Superman, is in the film. How Shazam knows him raises tremendous questions. It's basically just a joke. I'm just going to take it like that, and I'm just going to think of it as a joke until DC makes more films. We'll talk about that because there's at least two more things that I've thought about we should talk about. There's apparently two post-credit scenes. I only saw one because the one that I saw was enough for me. The post-credit scene, and we've already talked about spoilers, but if you don't want to know about this post-credit scene, Christ, what are you doing here? But the post-credit scene is Mr. Mind. Mr. Mind is incredible. He's like a wee caterpillar that is evil, and from the dawn of time or space or something. I'm never actually quite sure what Mr. Mind's deal is other than being incredible. But at the start of the film, Mr. Mind, wee caterpillar, like caterpillar-sized caterpillar metapod, is in a little dish in the Rock of Eternity, and it's like a wee kind of Howard the Duck moment where like you see him in the background, and it's like, oh my god, they got Mr. Mind, classic Shazam villain, Mr. Mind. They got him into the film. That was enough for me. I could have walked out of the cinema at that point. I was like, oh my god, they've made a Shazam film, like a Captain Marvel film, and it has Mr. Mind in it. That's enough. But the post-credit scene, and I guess when you think about it, how could it have been anything else? But the post-credit scene is Mr. Mind talking to Savannah, who's in jail, and Savannah's gone mad because he's lost his magic, and he's trying to scroll all of the wee kind of runes onto the doors and the walls of his cell to get back to the rock or get the magic back or something. And like Mr. Mind rocks in from the wee vent in his prison cell, and he's got a great voice. Mr. Mind's voice is fantastic. It's like this wee electronically generated, it's like ASMR kind of voice. And he's just like, foolish humans, you think that magic only comes from one place. It's great. It's up there. I'd have to say that it's up there in my top after credit scenes. It's probably like, let me talk to you about the Avengers Initiative, and then Mr. Mind. Like the rest of the after credit stuff is quite lame. Like when we get down to it, see if you put it all together. I can't actually like. I can't actually talk to you about another post-credit thing, and I've probably seen one of them this year. Like, what was the post-credit scene in Miss Marvel, Mister Captain Marvel? Was it just Nick Fury? Was it the Nick Fury cat? Yeah, like they're not great. Like at some point they became jokes, and I feel like they became jokes quite quickly. But and the Mister Mind scene is kind of a joke because it's about Mister Mind. You should look up Mister Mind. Mister Mind is incredible. He's got a wee radio, like a 1930s radio that he talks through because he's from the 30s. Because of course he is, because he's a Captain Marvel character. But yeah, apparently there's another one, but we didn't stay to see that because I saw the Mister Mind like bit, and I was like, right, film of the decade, 10 out of 10, 12 sequels, please. And that's a segue because we're going to talk about sequels to this film and whatever the hell DC are apparently doing, because this film is quite good. Like, maybe it's not to everyone's taste. There's probably bits of it that are objectively bad or didn't need to be in there, and it is, like I say, a wee bit Netflix bloaty. But overall, I would say it's quite good, and I feel like it's gone down quite well. I feel like people like it. I feel like the random number generators on the internet say that it's good. I expect to see a sequel. But DC, have they not like announced 100 films? Like, but they're all terrible sounding. Like they announced, like the joke is they announced The Trench is like one of their next upcoming films, which is an Aquaman sequel focusing on the Trench. Which, if I've not seen Aquaman, but I know from the comics that the Trench is it's like piranha people. They're basically like putties from Power Rangers, but they're piranha themed, kind of horror themed piranha putties. That's the joke, right? Like that's the kind of caliber of films they're announcing. I know the next one out of the gate is Joker, and I don't care about the Joker at all. I'll probably see that film because films are now quite cheap to see at the local cinema, so it's not really a problem seeing films. I don't care about the Joker in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, I know that's just my personal bias, but it does seem like third, experiment. We're in a kind of period of superhero films, just trying every genre, every genre, as a younger me would say. But it's probably quite good that we're at a point where they are making that Joker film, but I don't care about it, and it kind of looks bad, or it kind of looks naff. I don't know. Like it looks like a Joker film for your dad. I mean, the idea of a Joker film is kind of your dad in general, but it's probably the least bad. It's a solid decision. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's a solid business decision. I'm sure it'll make billions because people like the Joker, but that's getting like the tip of the iceberg for me, because after that, yes, you've got the Wonder Woman film, which definitely seems like it's happening because we've seen set photos. They've definitely been filming it. It's set in the 80s. Fair play to it. Like, that'll happen. I'm sure it'll be fine. But after that, they're doing Birds of Prey, which is like a Harley Quinn film. And again, that'll probably like make billions and billions of pounds because people love Harley Quinn. She's Lady Deadpool, basically. I just think that's kind of a horrendous. Like, weren't we trying to get away from this? Like, weren't we trying to get away from anything Suicide Squad? I know Suicide Squad probably did make the money, but it is the worst thing. I forgot to talk about Suicide Squad. I listed all the DC films and I forgot to talk about it. Oh my god. Suicide Squad is bad, but it's like an enjoyable bad. It's a bad you can watch and make fun of things happening in Suicide Squad that are just inexplicable, and it's hilarious. But I thought we were trying to get away from that kind of, teenage and into, because Aquaman and Shazam are good films. Well, I assume well made, or at least enjoyably. I can't speak for Aquaman, but it looks fun. It looks like they're thrusting away from the teenage of Suicide Squad and Batman versus Superman, the new metal. They're desperately trying to escape the new metal, but then they're going back to it with The Trench and the Birds of Prey film, and also like a billion other things they've announced, but like not announced, like a new Superman or they're doing Black Adam, but it's not Captain Marvel 2. It's a Black Adam solo film. I should have a list. I should have a list of all the things they've acknowledged and announced, because it seems bad. It seems like they should stop. They should stop announcing things for sure. They should take a step back and just notice that Shazam did well. I'm sure they will have noticed that Aquaman did well, and will, because that made like $1 billion or something. They should definitely do something in that direction. And everything they've announced doesn't really seem like it's in that direction. Maybe to their like weird AI brain, it feels like it's the same direction, because they're like, oh, Aquaman worked. These other obscure heroes will work, because like we've made Aquaman a thing. We've made Aquaman $1 billion. Why can't we make like, I don't know, just all these horrendous things? It's like they don't understand they get the obscurity, but they don't understand the tone. I don't know. They are making Suicide Squad 2. They do have James Gunn. I'm sure that'll be fine. It probably will be fine, but it does also seem like a bad decision, doesn't it? Like, why would you make Suicide Squad 2 this far away from Suicide Squad 1 with some of the cast, but not all of the cast? I don't know. I'm kind of feel like Suicide Squad 2 won't happen. I mean, it probably has to happen, but it does have the air of something that won't happen about it. Just like the Flash film. Apparently Ezra Miller is like, he's got Grant Morrison around, and that they're trying to crank out a script, but as much as I love Grant Morrison, I don't think that's going to happen. Again, that has the air of something that just won't happen about it. And I guess that's where DC's been, because remember when Justice League was kind of coming out but not coming out, and it was pushed back, and there was just that long stretch of there just not being films out. So it's kind of weird that Aquaman's come out and that Shazam's come out, and I guess Joker's coming out this year. Like, we are in a period of films coming out, but I don't know, DC. You're doing well with these two, but it doesn't look like you're learning anything from the things that have done well. But yeah, I basically talked for like an hour, and I probably said like about 1,000 times, and I don't want to work on that, so I won't. But yeah, thank you for listening. It's been good. It's been good to chat. Basically, bye.